Hello everybody, I'm MJ, back again at the corner of country, and I am tickled to death that you're back here with me. I am so excited to be bringing this program to you, and I need to preface it by telling you I've been married a long time. I won't say how long, but I've been married a long time to just one man. And he tells everybody that the only thing consistent about me is that I am totally inconsistent. So if you'll come back every week to the corner of country, you will be entertained, you will be encouraged, and I hope you'll let me know what you think about the show. Now then, to preface this amazing guest that I'm about to present to you, I need to read a very short poem, because when a friend of mine out of Atlanta, big bookstore up there, emailed me and said, "I've got a guy, you got to meet him." This was for my newspaper column, and I said, "Oh no, I need to meet this guy for something else too. We're going to have him down in Manchester on TV." So I got real excited the more I learned about him, and I remembered this poem, and I want to share it with you before I introduce Brian. If I knew you and you knew me, if both of us could clearly see, and with an inner sight divine, the meaning of your heart and mine, I'm sure that we would differ less and clasp our hands in friendliness. Our thoughts would pleasantly agree if I knew you and you knew me. If I knew you and you knew me, as each one knows his own self, we could look each other in the face and see therein a truer grace. Life has so many hidden woes, so many thorns for every rose. The why of things our heart would see if I knew you and you knew me. It's from Mountain Trailways for Youth. And now I want you to meet Captain Brian Settles, author of No Reason for Dying. And Brian, I just got through telling you no talking points today, no Q&A. I have one question for you. Tell me where you've come from.
I have come from a Lincoln State orphanage in Nebraska as a baby that was given away by his mother when he was 7 days old. And I spent almost 3 years in that Nebraska State orphanage before these wonderful people back in Muncie, Indiana, who could not have children, were told by the welfare department that there was a little biracial baby out in a Nebraska orphanage that was available for adoption. And they were inspired to get on that train and come all the way to Lincoln, Nebraska. And they came to the orphanage, and I kiddingly say to audiences when I'm talking, they came in and saw me pacing in my little orphanage cell and fell in love with me and signed the paperwork and took me back to Muncie, Indiana, where the greatest adventure of my life began. Being a biracial baby. It was not too popular in Nebraska during the 40s to keep mixed race babies. My mother had gotten pregnant when she was 16 years old by her African American boyfriend, who wasn't many more years older than she was. And she made the decision that it would have been easier to give me up than to try to keep me back in Nebraska during the 40s. So then I grew up on the streets of Muncie. All black neighborhood, like many of our neighborhoods were in the United States during the late 40s. The lightest skinned child on the street. And it's always been amazing to me of man's inhumanity to man and the cruelty that you meet on the playgrounds. But many of my playmates at that early age would tell me that they're lying to you inside about your daddy being your daddy, and your sister doesn't look like you either. And when you have a father, an adoptive father, that looks like Shaquille O'Neal's brother, and you're my complexion, it does raise credibility problems. And so I ran in the house, and I have it in the second chapter in the book, asking Mama, why do the kids keep telling me that Daddy's not my daddy? And that's when she told me the awful truth of my adoption. And there was suddenly an awareness of a disconnect that I had. I had the blessing of the Lord to have Mama Bernice Settles come to that orphanage and adopt me. And she was my blessing, but oftentimes, as I say also in the cover of the book, our blessings are sometimes draped in the trauma of crisis. And so there I am, this biracial baby on the streets of Muncie, half of my friends wanting to be just like me and admiring me, unfortunately for the lightness of my skin and my curly hair, because we hadn't yet arrived at a point in our society where black people could really feel good about themselves. And then there was another group that was waiting on me outside that wanted to beat my butt every time I came out.
Which group, besides your grandma, or your mother, besides your mother, your adoptive mom, which of those groups do you credit with helping to make you the man you became?
That's a great question, MJ, and I'd have to give the credit to the ones that wanted to beat me up. Because I had a neediness, and I share with audiences frequently, is that we have to look at what's using our lives. Because I had a neediness and an insecurity about being, number one, abandoned, and then number two, adopted. Two double whammies, and then the lightest thing on the streets with wanting to belong and wanting to fit in. Can you imagine a child of 6 and 7 saying prayers to the Lord in which, Lord, if you were going to make me colored, why didn't you make me brown skin? So that I didn't have to always ask these questions, what are you?
Who taught you to pray?
Bernice Settles taught me to pray. She sometimes had to force my adoptive sister and I to go to church, but it was that experience at Church of Christ at the corner of our block that I started my relationship with Christ, and then we changed to Bethel AME there in Muncie, and it was the example that my mother set for loving the Lord. And you have to understand that Mama Settles raised my sister and me as a single parent because my adoptive father left home to run off with the woman that he had been running around with while he was with Mama. And he finally left, and it was another devastating blow to a young child to know that your father not only has left home, but that he has so little love for you that he's willing to rationalize not paying child support.
How old were you when he left?
8.
Oh.
I was
I'm
adopted
so
at 3, and he left home at 8. But the thing is an amazing relationship developed because he was a jock. He went through Alabama State on a football scholarship. And one of the things that I had realized out of my neediness and my insecurity and the pressure that was put on me by the people that despised me in my neighborhood for looking the way I looked and having a mother who was college educated, who wanted the best for us, is that unfortunately, you know, that the peer pressure has a lot of our bright students and our students that are a lot more capable, they're selling out to belong and to be accepted.
So was it sports that propelled you forward and into college and into this amazing career that's now?
Sports, from my biological father, who was a state championship high jumper back in Nebraska. I learned many years later I had a degree of athletic ability, and I realized at an early age that if Brian Settles was able to be unstoppable on the basketball court, or maybe it'd take a half a dozen players to bring him down after he caught a football, that would divert attention from Brian Settles, half white, half black. And so I launched into serious athletics, and coaches would tell me even in junior high school, Settles, you keep your grades solid and continue playing ball the way you're playing them, you're going to go to any college you want to on an athletic scholarship.
We're getting into performance now. As a teenager, you used the word a minute ago, relationship with Christ. Were you already starting a relationship with Jesus at that point, or was it just ritual? Were you just going to church with your mom? Were you more bent on performing, or had the relationship already started?
I think the crossover point for me was as a sixth grader, 12 years old. Some of the patrol boys who helped the students to cross the street, crossing guards, some of the ones that were admired were sent to Boy Scout, the YMCA summer camp. We could not go to the white summer camp where the white boys went, and they sent us to the all-black camp. But at that camp, the only white counselor that they had who pronounced his faith in the Lord invited some of us to come to his cabin for a Bible reading one night.
Sixth grade.
Sixth grade. And I went in, and at the end of that session, talking about the Lord and being obedient and that Christ loves us, I gave myself to the Lord that night. And they had me at the closing ceremony with 150 strangers, teenagers, all the way up to 18 years old, this 12-year-old Brian Settles from Muncie, making a testimonial about giving myself to the Lord. And it was a tearful, frightening experience because when you jump out there and declare yourself, now you're putting yourself in a special place. And that was it. And from then on, it was like I was committed to trying to be the best person that I could be and living a Christ-like life. But I derailed by the time I was at the end of my high school experience out of a pastor that we discovered was chasing the single females around the pews when he had a wife over in the parsonage.
And that so discouraged you that you turned away from your faith?
I turned away with the gnawing question, is anyone really in charge if our leadership, is falling from their Holy Spirit walk, then what's this really all about?
So in that frame of mind and heart and faith, you are heading out of college and into war in Vietnam.
Absolutely. The biggest thing that I say to our viewers is that we don't have to be alone in this life, that we always have the Lord with us. But you will find that your walk is a much different place, a much different place if you feel like you're doing it alone. And that's what I was alone from college, through combat in Vietnam, and through much of my adult life. Went to church, but didn't belong to church.
Well, what the viewers don't know is that Brian became a very accomplished airline pilot. He's called a warrior poet, excuse me. He teaches over at Mercer now. He has impressed me to no end with the way he has incorporated every detail of his past life into a story of victory. And he's using his story, as we all should use our stories and our past, to help others. I am so proud of this man before me. And after the break, you are in for an amazing treat. I love to hear an author read from his or her own work. And I have informed my friend here that he's going to read to you. But even more than that, I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs too, because it is such poetry. I'm really looking forward to sharing this with you. Brian, are you excited?
I'm very excited, and it's just a blessing to be here with such an exuberant and wonderful host as yourself,
Oh,
MJ.
my goodness. He just made a point or two. Before we get lost in the reading, tell the viewers how they can get a copy.
Signed copies of No Reason for Dying are available from my website, which is www.captain, abbreviated, C-A-P-T, briansettles.com. www.captainbriansettles.com. And you just fill out the information there, and I'm notified within 15 minutes, and I have a signed copy on the way to you within 24 hours.
Stay with us. We'll be back, and the captain's going to read to you.
Instead of going out tonight, have a great night in from Primetime Video. A 2-day DVD rental is just $2.50. Primetime Video also sells new and older movies, music CDs, car deodorizers, gum, candy, soft drinks, and video games for all systems. New releases come in every 2 weeks. Primetime Video, 1004 Warm Springs Highway in Manchester. For convenient and quick service, stop by the Quick Spot for gas and groceries, including beer, wine, lottery tickets, candy, and ice cream. Convenient and quick service at Quick Spot Convenience Store, next to Piggly Wiggly in Manchester.
Corley Drug's new Loyalty Club cards.
I got mine.
Corley Drugs is giving you more, much more, with the all-new Loyalty Club for dollar rewards. Just sign up for free and begin enjoying the savings. Corley Drugs rewards our customers with loyalty rewards and still offer fast and accurate prescription services too. Corley Drugs with 4 locations in LaGrange and in Manchester.
Here at Sun Fashions, we have a variety of all your needs, from half wigs to whole wigs, from lace front wigs to ponytails. We also carry your beauty supply needs. We have your latest fashion in jewelry, handbags, clothes, and shoes. So whenever you're in town and you want to shop around, make it your passion to come to Sun Fashion.
I needed a car, and I could not get one financed.
Thomaston Ford is the answer. For over 26 years, Thomaston Ford has been helping people get a car when others wouldn't. At Thomaston Ford, you can buy here and pay here. You can sign and drive.
Thomaston Ford helped me out when no one else could.
Thomaston Ford, family-owned, family-friendly. You'll love the way we do business.
Hey everybody, I'm glad you came back. And as I promised, you're in for a treat. I hope you'll email me at mj@cornerofcountry and tell me what you think of this particular program. And if you like it and like what we're about to do, I'll repeat it on down the road with other authors that we have come in. You may just want us to talk. You may want to experience what you are about to experience, and I need to hear that. For 25 years, I've been a member of the Southeastern Booksellers Association, and I've been blessed to be able to hear countless authors read from their works and then take their books home and read it, and as I read, I hear in their voice. So when you're reading No Reason for Dying, you're going to be able to hear Captain Settle's voice in your mind, sprinkled with a little bit of MJ's voice, because there are a few paragraphs in here that I have absolutely demanded the right to be able to read, and he has very graciously given me permission. So join us, sit back and enjoy as we read from No Reason for Dying by Captain Brian Settles. This comes from the foreword. There is a distant place just beyond the invisible mind's eye where disbelief lives. It is the place where the memories of our most extraordinary encounters with life reside. Encounters we can't revisit because time has moved on, and our current minds cannot fathom that we actually lived through our past.
I experienced the occasional flash of awareness that I actually survived 20,000 hours of piloting jet airplanes and survived a year being shot at in military combat in service to my country.
Now watch us as we go all the way to the back of the book. My husband gets so put out with me, even with a magazine or a book, I go to the end. In fact, with Brian's book, I read the last sentence first. Sorry about that. So now we're going to page 403, and I'm giving it back to Brian.
Chapter 25, 200 Missions Celebration. Time wasn't long. It was the last steamy week of July 1969 when I woke up to discover a note taped to the outside of my bachelor's quarters door. It was from my spiritual mentor, Perry, written in purple crayon. B, I've arranged a goodbye war to get together at UBON with our classmates. Squadron CO already said yes. Thought you might be interested. See me for details.
So did you go see him?
I did go see him. Continuing. What the hell, I rationalized. Perry and I, by our very survival for 11 months, had moved unwittingly into an elite group of combat veterans. We were still alive. That by itself was something to party about. All survivors of life-threatening challenge share a profound bond, a kindred spirit that lives beyond simple human relatedness. Becoming part of that fortunate group was an enviable achievement, but often carried a high cost and suffering for veterans and the families whose prayers they dragged along with them. The resultant life alteration was not something you would knowingly ever volunteer to experience. You simply arrived at salvation's threshold through grace and the fickle writings of fate upon your life. Coincidentally, Perry and I were both approaching 200 missions. Perhaps we had done little more than be lucky. Perhaps we had done little more than be lucky was the true reality of our situation. Maybe we had actually been doing something right to stay alive. Or was it simply that we were just luckier than those who bought it? I couldn't believe with any real conviction I was any better pilot than my buddies who were no longer with us. Many of them were among the best and the brightest.
Brian, before we move on to this next part that so moves me, and I have to get out a tissue every time I look at it, I want to tell you that 2 weeks before my husband returned from Vietnam, he was working on a plane. He did sheet metal work on airplanes. And the whistle started, I don't know what it's called, but the alarm sounded, and everybody had to run for cover to various bunkers. Well, my husband ran in one direction, and his two buddies ran in the other.
Yes.
And they were blown up, and he made it. So we look at those of you who survive, and we say how lucky you are, but we don't have a clue, do we?
Right.
What you live with, having been a survivor.
I asked the question in the book, in 2 or 3 places, of asking the Lord, why did he bring me through when I didn't deserve, through my behavior and my loss of my Holy Spirit walk, because I'm not proud of some of my behavior in this book. But he brought me through, and I tell audiences when I'm talking to them, he brought me to here to be able to share my testimony of what God's mercy and grace can do for us.
And he brought you here today for our viewers. It's been a while since I've read anything that moved me quite as much as what I'm about to ask him to read to you. We are at war. We're not just at war in foreign countries. We war among ourselves. We criticize one another. We call one another names. We put one another down. And as I read earlier when we started the program, we don't take time to know one another. Get out a tissue. You're going to need it. Brian is ready now. He's at the party. He's been asked by the general and a number of other people on base to give a little prepared speech. He says, I reached down to unzip my flight suit thigh pocket, withdrew the folded, handwritten speech, and delivered my Da Nang swan song. Awkwardly, I flattened out the pages of my speech, unable to press out the wrinkles that joined in a conspiracy with my trembling hands to blur the words which I had to get out. Before I read, I want to let the audience know that
flying that final mission, knowing that you were going to come back home to your family and loved ones, was something that we all prayed for and looked forward to. And this was the going home party that I shared with a colonel, a major, and another captain, and me, the lowly first lieutenant. And because a squadron commander was involved, there was only 200 pilots, fighter pilots, and maintenance technician people in that room. And I mustered the courage to be able to deliver my going home speech, which was radical departure from what was normally acceptable. General Roberts, squadron commanders and gentlemen, this indeed is an incredible place and time for me. I feel very fortunate to be standing here before you. I've been waiting 1 long year for this blessing. I hope you all have the good fortune also to stand here on your tour completion. Since I survived to make it here, and it is my party too, I beg your indulgence while I share with you some reflections and sentiments on my year at Da Nang as a co-pilot in the F-4 Phantom for the United States Air Force. While the experience flying the Phantom in combat has been the thrill of a lifetime, honestly speaking, a sense of dignity with the mission has rarely been available to me. I read the daily headlines in Stars and Stripes and witness the delayed news accounts of the cities burning due to racial strife back in the United States, and I am saddened and ashamed. As I recall the 2 Davis-Monthan F-4 instructor pilots in the locker room talking the day after Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, I can never remove the listening of my mind to those stinging words, "Well, he was asking for it." With the racial strife at home and knowing there are neighborhoods all over America where my family and I are not welcome to live because of the color of our skin, it leaves me feeling I sold out on remaining at home to fight for racial justice and equality. It would have made dying over here on Vietnamese soil the most bitter and tragic of outcomes. When the words gook, slopehead, slant eyes are spoken, I hear nigger. I have wondered many times if it's easier for us to kill innocent peasants out in the rice paddies simply because their skin is yellow, their nostrils rounded, eyes slanted, and their customary peasant dress is black pajamas.
Let's pause for just a second, Brian. As you were reading there, I could just imagine people getting up and walking away from their set. I'm sure it has happened already. But I repeat, we do it every day. My own children have done it to one another. I'm just asking you to hear Brian out and think about what he's reading to you. Keep going, babe.
Yes, the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese nationalists are fighting for a united Vietnam under a communist government and society. Thwarting that objective is the overriding rationalization for our war. But I wonder if our concealed racism toward these people of color will follow us back home to the smoldering cities of our homeland. We are guests in this country, ostensibly fighting to preserve democracy for the South Vietnamese against communist aggression. But what about our aggression and our arrogance and our condescension toward even our allies? Do we have a franchise to come here and call these people dumb zips or stupid gooks because they drive on their streets the way they do? Do we have the right in their country to scoff at their customs and cultural uniquenesses simply because they are different from what we know living in America? Like classic ugly Americans, are we justified staring down our noses at these people who were cultivating their civilization 1,000 years before America was even born? Each of us needs to ask the question if we are individually advancing the best face of America in our treatment of these people. The chow hall help, the maids, the Republic of Vietnam soldiers? Where is our moral and humanitarian leadership? What does it reveal about the fiber of our character, drunk or not, to flip the bottom half of an unfinished gin and tonic out the van door at a Vietnamese soldier passing by on his motor scooter? Are we really winning the hearts and minds of the Vietnamese people with our indifference and cruelty? Or are we, through our behavior and attitudes, creating more Viet Cong than we're eradicating?
Let's translate this now. You've got another paragraph to go. Can you imagine how hard it was for him to give this? But as he's reading about Vietnam, just put yourself anywhere in the world today where we have American soldiers, or put yourself in your own yard and somebody's infringing on your turf, and you call a neighbor to come help me out here, and your neighbor comes and you argue about the boundary line. But while your neighbor's there, he says, hey, I don't like the way your front door is painted, and I don't like that flower bed over there at all, and you certainly could have chosen, my goodness, couldn't you have done better than this? Do we do that? Do we do that in countries where we visit as tourists, where we go as soldiers? God, I hope not. Come on, Brian, just a few more paragraphs.
If America is to realize and retain its position of moral leadership in the world, we frontline ambassadors who carry the baton of good or ill will ultimately shall determine whether we are truly the universal standard for humanitarian and democratic principles. We will render that status. Each of you must ask in your private self if your behavior is contributing anything positive that will be left behind when you return to go home. Will anything you have learned here contribute positively to better understanding of people in life? Understanding that awaits you back home with your family and friends. Carrying the burden of these observations around with me for a year as I fly these combat missions has not made it easy for me to be here. But, in conclusion, I hope you will re-examine yourselves and seek to cultivate new attitudes that will allow you to be the best that you can be, accepting others and their cultures as worthy of dignity and respect just as we expect it. And finally, in standard farewell jargon, I wish you a safe tour. Keep your airspeed up and watch your six. Thank you for your patience.
Now it's my turn to read my favorite paragraph. I stepped to the side of the mic in a room filled with a stunned silence. Stunned, echoing silence. Thinking in that instance, damn, they didn't even clap. By the time I recognized the thought, I realized the accused throng was paralyzed with uncertainty of how to be, how to respond to the virtual indictment I just delivered. After a few seconds, in the interminable limbo of nothingness, a single clapping arose from the side of the room along the wall. It was General Roberts. Upon receiving the green light of the General's approval, the room exploded with applause and whistles. Many who were seated stood to express their acknowledgement, not so much perhaps for what I had said, but that I had the courage to say it to that group in that room on that occasion. You know, Brian, there's not a day that goes by for most of us that we aren't required to somehow take a stand. And it takes courage.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I agonized over with this speech, which I wrote a couple of months before I delivered it out of the optimism and hope that they weren't going to mail the speech that was never delivered back to my folks because I didn't make it through the tour. But I realized that these things were burning on me, weighting me down as I daily flew those combat missions and lost buddies who there was no explanation of why they made it to meet the farm, to buy the farm, and I didn't. But I knew that I could not abdicate my responsibility to share my thoughts if I had that occasion to do it. Because you lose a little bit of yourself if you don't have the courage to stand for what you believe in. And that's one of the things that makes it so challenging for many of our young Christians, is that they don't have the courage to stand for loving the Lord.
Absolutely.
And letting their faith guide them so that they know that they're not alone out there when they're being subjected to all of these temptations. Having to give that speech enabled me to look myself in the mirror, because if I had failed to deliver that message and say what was on Brian Settle's heart, I could have never looked myself in the mirror again the way that I looked at myself after that speech.
Tell me how you feel after all these years of finally sitting down and putting this 1 year in this amount of space. 1 year of your life is here. How did you feel when you finished sticking it in there?
Well, it's interesting well, one thing people say, oh, it's so big, the book is so big, but the thing is as Clyde Edgerton, my pilot training buddy who's a successful novelist, said, it is a veritable page turner. I mean, once people even that don't read very much get into this book, they find it a fascinating read because I've been so honest. I have shared information about myself that most people wouldn't have the courage to talk about.
That was important, wasn't it? That had to be.
Absolutely, because I wanted, by the courage of my confession, which is in the subtitle of the book, I wanted others to perhaps recognize somebody that they knew in the pages of my book, and maybe look at the things that are using their lives, that are in the way from the possibility that they are. And I knew at the time, as a poet spirit, I always called myself a poet disguised as a pilot. Going through those combat missions, it was too incredible of a once-in-a-lifetime experience not to write about it. I just didn't know that life was going to get in the way for 40 years, and it was going to take me this long to finally get it between the covers of a book.
So now that you've finished the book, can you tell our audience what you're doing that I'm so proud of at Mercer?
Well, I do confess that I don't deserve the blessings and the favor that the Lord has showed me. Many of us do not. But nevertheless, since reflecting on what the Lord has brought me through, I have dedicated the rest of my life to seeking God's purpose in my life and being able to help young people particularly. And that's a difficult challenge because we have to understand that children and young people see life through the filters of being young. They don't see it through the filters of being experienced combat veteran and airline pilot. So you have to craft your communication in the medium and the idiom of the listener.
Yes.
To be able to get through. But I let them
speak their language.
Absolutely. But so that's what I enjoy doing now, is mentoring young people. I'm a adjunct professor at Mercer University, and this book is only part of the story, because who I've been able to become as a result of the Lord's favor and mercy enables me to spend the rest of my time sharing my testimony and letting people know that you can prevail from whatever circumstances you're in. And the outcome may not look like what you had in mind, but just always remember that it's always God's design.
Absolutely.
It's always the Lord's design, but you have to learn at a young age to be able to trust in things unseen.
Yes. It's called faith.
Absolutely.
It's a faith walk.
You know, I'm not sure we're going to have time for you to get through this, but because of what you've just shared and because I love this poem, he really is a warrior poet, y'all. He's amazing. Even the book reads like poetry. Well, actually, the book is quite raw in places, but in other places it is just pure poetry. Do you mind reading what you can of this amazing poem?
Oh, thank you very much for the opportunity. Yes, I wanted to share this. I wrote this when I was thinking about the challenges of parents dealing with the challenges of their children and trying to get some insight into the work that there is to be done. I titled this, God Gives His Creatures What They Need. Thanks be to God for the gifts He grants to guide our passage to fulfillment of His purpose in our lives. And yet, we expend our lives ignoring the divine gifts. God's simple creatures show wisdom in managing their lives that leaves us humans in second place. Yes, man invents flat screen, LCDs, computers, iPods, and Xboxes to preoccupy their offspring, while squirrel parents watch over and care for their young, hide acorns in the ground during fall, and guide gives them back in the winter to find them. Have you ever known a hungry or homeless squirrel? God's feathered young remain in the nest, following the parents' birds' teachings on safety, caution, and flying. When the babes of the nest have learned and matured, they take flight into their future. Have you ever known a teenage bird who flew back to the nest to live with mama bird? God gives us what we need, but we ignore the blessings. Some of us ignore the wisdom of our nests. Some may not have anyone teaching in their nest. The birds and squirrels find their sustenance, whistling, chirping, and squeaking contentedly through each day. But we humans moan, groan, and complain, lost in the glitter of the superficial. The material possessions obscure and obstruct the path to our profoundness in life and the purposes that God has for us. Be of courage and good faith that God provides all we need. Remember that the Jesus I know would not be driving a Mercedes or an Escalade, nor live in a mansion with a swimming pool, nor drape himself in bling or fat diamonds on his fingers to inspire his flock to believe in him. Parents and children seek to be as wise as the winged creatures and squirrels in the trees. Parents, teach your young what they need to survive: knowledge, discipline, respect, and praise. Instill the magic of faith and the humility of the chipmunk. Find missing answers for parenting in prayer and your church family. We are our brother's keepers. Our children's flight through life is fueled by the knowledge and inspiration we impart to them. Are we smarter than the squirrel? Let us cease squandering God's blessings and build strong nests that empower our young to fly high and far, gathering many acorns in their lives.
Thank you, Brian. Later this year, we want to have a contest with the young people in this area and have them write essays or poems from their heart. And it's being formulated now. We don't have all the details yet, but would you consider being one of the judges when we have that contest?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Is there a parting word in reference to your adoptive mother and the way she so influenced you that you'd like to leave with our audience today? There's so many single moms out there. There's so many struggling mothers and struggling children and struggling single fathers. You've experienced this on many levels, and there's so much of your life we have not talked about. But it's been one victory after another. Do you have a parting word?
I just encourage young people particularly, in light of the fact that part of nature's cruel joke is that parents don't receive the acknowledgement for the sacrifices and the efforts that they make to do the right thing, raising their children. They don't get the acknowledgement in a timely manner. Often, if time runs out, not at all. So I encourage people not to live your lives like tomorrow is promised. You have to say the things today and live intentionally in the moment based on what needs to be done now. Acknowledge your parents for the job that they're doing. They may be falling short, but they're still your parents, and they deserve your love and appreciation for what they're trying to do for you. My mother, Bernice Settles, instilled so much love in me that it was hard sometimes to be in a world that was unloving.
Wow.
But you have to continue to stand for the love of the Lord and loving parents who give you the courage to be the best that you can be. And I would not be who I am today had it not been for those wonderful seeds of love and faith that Mama Settles planted in me as a child growing up in Muncie, Indiana.
And the last line, at 63, I have been blessed to find peace and contentment in the joy of loving the Lord. Thank you so much for joining us. I need you to email me. Let me know what kind of programming and what kind of guest you'd like to have on this show, your show, Corner of Country, right here in Manchester, Georgia. MJ@cornerofcountry.com. Want to hear from you. Thank you for joining us.
From cotton candy to concrete cutters, from wedding fountains to high-pressure washers, you'll find it at Taylor Foster Rental. If you have a wedding in your future, let Taylor Foster Rental help you with everything from candelabras to tents. If you have a tough job to do, let Taylor Foster Rental help you with the right tools to get it done right. From birthday parties to full-blown festivals, Taylor Foster has inflatables, cotton candy machines, and more. Taylor Foster Rental in Manchester has what you need. Corley Drugs is opening the store wide with savings every day. Right now, you can sign up for our loyalty club for dollar rewards. Why pay more? Corley Drugs Loyalty Club is just another way we can say thank you.
I save every time I shop.
Sign up for free today and save more. Corley Drugs with 4 locations in LaGrange and in Manchester.
Instead of going out tonight, have a great night in from Primetime Video. A 2-day DVD rental is just $2.50. Primetime Video also sells new and older movies, music CDs, car deodorizers, gum, candy, soft drinks, and video games for all systems. New releases come in every 2 weeks. Primetime Video, 1004 Warm Springs Highway in Manchester. For convenient and quick service, stop by the Quick Spot for gas and groceries, including beer, wine, lottery tickets, candy, and ice cream. Convenient and quick service at Quick Spot Convenience Store, next to Piggly Wiggly in Manchester.
Here at Sun Fashions, we have a variety of all your needs from half wigs to whole wigs, from lace front wigs to ponytails. We also carry your beauty supply needs. We have your latest fashion in jewelry, handbags, clothes, and shoes. So whenever you're in town and you want to shop around, make it your passion to come to Sun Fashion.